know how to say it. It's almost like a religion. It's like I said, you know what? If I had to give up anything right now, it would be everything but turkey hunting. Of course, back then you didn't have YouTube and Google and, so you listened to a lot of old timers. All of us pretty much knew where those turkeys would be roosted somewhere about. So you would what you would do is you would float. You would float down the river and you would listen.
Did you grow up turkey hunting?
In the springtime, it was all about bass fishing, shellcracker beds, and turkey hunting. And my uncle, his name was Durrell Hutchins, he loved to turkey hunt. So I would go with him in the morning to go shellcracker fishing. And he said, we're going to go, we was hunting public then. Everybody around here pretty much hunted public that hunted turkeys, but there was only a few people, so it was like, man, you could hear turkeys, you could get on turkeys, and it was, and I would go with him, and he had an old, Lynch box, double-sided box, and that's all he used. And we would go with him, I would go with him rather, and we would go and we would hunt for about 2 hours, and then we'd go get on the shellcracker bed, And that's how I got introduced to turkey hunting. But I remember I got so infatuated with that box call he had. I thought that thing was the greatest thing I had ever in my life. It was that, And tell you a quick story about that. I hunted with him, as much as he asked me to go, I'd go. And he liked for me to go because I was always like super duper quiet, do whatever I needed to do because I didn't want him not to ever carry me back, So, and I remember one time we were walking this ridge and we had got off the boat. We had to go by boat actually. So we go by boat and you get off and we're walking up this ridge and we got to the top of the ridge. And of all things, he had bought him a gobble tube. Have you ever seen a gobble tube?
Oh, yeah.
He bought a gobble tube. It's one of the first ones that come out. The thing was that long, It's like you could extend it. And I remember he got up there, and there were some guys that had a trolling motor out, and it had just broke day. And we were on one side of this island, and the boat was pretty much hid. And anyway, make a long story short, he's up on that ridge and he bumps me. He says, "Catfish, you see those guys?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I see them. He said, "We're going to have some fun." So what are you going to? He said, "Watch this." And all of a sudden one of them said, he said, "Oh." He said, and man, we was watching those guys say, so man, they get the trolling motor and they pull up, man, they piling out of that boat, man. He said, "We got to go, man, we got to go." So we went on the other side of the island, crank up the boat and left, So those guys were up there hunting a gobbler, that wasn't there. It was crazy. But stuff like that, there's a lot of little stories like that with him, we had a good time. But yeah, a lot of fun. But he introduced me to turkey hunting. And man, I remember thinking, well, if I ever get to the point where I can do it the way I want to do it, I'm gonna do it. So what I started doing, guys, at that point, my dad bought me a turkey call, that kind of stuff, and so I just started doing the thing that I call milk a lot of cows and turn them on butter. So what I started doing, I just kind of started teaching myself how to turkey hunt, and then. And the thing about it is, until I I got to driving age is when I really started turkey hunting. 16 is when I really started doing it. Again, of course, I was a baseball player, so I was in high school, played ball in high school, and then went to college. And then when I got out of college, I left college and got married. And that's when I really got serious about it. But I was already just, and this guy, Buddy Burton, was an old man that loved to turkey hunt, and he would come by my dad's paint store, and which is the family business now, and he would come in there and we would talk about turkeys, and he would talk about killing turkeys, and man, I was hanging on to everything he said, and he was one of those guys, he felt like if a turkey ever answered you one time, you never call to him again, kind of thing, So, but then later on, his hearing wasn't very well, so he let his wife go with him, Miss Mary. She'd go with him, and what she would do, she would listen for it. And but anyway, but man, I learned a lot from that guy. And anyway, he called me Parker Boy. Is what he called me, Parker Boy. And but yeah, as far as the heritage, my uncle was instrumental in that. I mean, it's just, those days on the river we spent, and bass fishing, and and his shellcracker fishing. But boy, that turkey, I remember many hunts, and it was really special time. It really was. But
Now, what is the story with your uncle on your mom's side of the family, one of her brothers? Do you know how he got introduced to turkey hunting?
well, it was he actually is probably the first generation turkey hunter. But the whole thing is, it's like when you go on the river in the springtime, used to, if you went down Spring Creek, or if you went on the Flint, and you was around like anywhere down there, pretty much, it was so bountiful in turkeys. If you got up in the morning and you went hunting, I mean went shellcracker fishing or whatever, when it broke day and you was out there, you were going to hear turkeys gobble. And for some reason, that just interested him. And there were some cousins that he had on the other side of the family that liked to turkey hunt too. And so that's how he got involved in it. It was like, man, these turkeys are gobbling. I ought to try this thing out. So that's how he really got involved in turkey hunting. And it's just being down there hearing them, and then decided he just wanted to turkey hunt. And that's the story I had. But he really, I think probably to him, turkey hunting was something he did before he went shellcracker fishing, because he loved to fish. And but anyway, that's how he got started. And back then, and used to, even on up into after turkey season went out, it wasn't nothing going on. You still hear turkeys gobbling, so they will gobble all the way up into late spring, so a lot of turkeys back then. We kind of took a hit on turkeys, but there would, Michael came through and kind of knocked a lot of the timber out, but right now they're starting to come back down there quite a bit. But yeah.
What was your uncle's hunting style back then? Like you said, he had a box call he really liked to use, but like what was his style like back then and how he hunted?
Well, he was one of those guys. If he heard a turkey gobble, and if that turkey ever answered him, he would try to. He would stay on that turkey as long as that turkey gobbled. But if that turkey ever stopped gobbling, he would go try to get on another one, that kind of thing, because there were a lot of birds back then. But his style was, he pretty much knew, all of us pretty much knew where those turkeys would be roosted somewhere about. So you would actually, what you would do is you would float. You would float down the river and you would listen. And when it was breaking day, turkey would gobble. Of course, owl hooting, we all learned how to owl hoot before we could come out of our moms. I was owl hooting before I knew what turkey hunting was, but anyway, we'd ride, we would get on a boat, we would float, he would owl hoot, turkey would gobble, we would pull over to the edge, kind of like we did with those guys with the gobble tube, and we would go in and get as close as we could, to the turkey, sit down, and he, basically what he would do is he would let that turkey gobble. He would never tree call to that turkey, but it was like, he would try to distinguish if that bird was on the ground or not. You know how a bird would turn on a limb, and so he's thinking, but he wanted that bird on the ground before he called it. He didn't like the tree call to those birds, and but every now and then, he would tree call, something like that. But he would wait till they hit the ground before he'd call them, and call to them. And that was kind of his style. But he didn't do a lot of moving around. He never got up, and his thing was, he felt like you were spooking more turkeys than you were hunting. In other words, if you got up and you moved on a turkey, he felt like, a turkey can see and hear. And, a turkey's hearing is, as you well know, it's unbelievable what a turkey can hear. And he was like, "We're just going to stay put, Catfish, right here. We're not moving. We're going to stay put." So that was kind of his style, and he killed some birds. He hunted a lot on weekdays before work. He was actually there was a company called Thomas and Betts that was in Bainbridge, and he was the plant manager. And so what he would do is he would go before, and he would stay till about 9 or 10 o'clock, and then he'd go to work. He could pretty much do what he wanted. But he hunted 3 or 4 days a week, when I wasn't there, of course. So but he never would get up, and he wasn't a run and gun guy. I mean, he was one of those stay put, and let's see what happens, So, but I can't remember him ever getting up and trying to cut a turkey off, trying to follow a turkey. He just kind of stayed put, So
How would he call to a turkey once he thought that the gobbler was on the ground?
And see, that's what's so interesting. I mean, it was a cluck and a yelp, and that was it. It was not. Every now and then he would cut to a turkey a little bit, but it was just a pop, pop, and that man. Hey, listen, this old lynch box. It was almost sound like a gobbler yelp to me, but man, it's like, God, he was real slow about it, and but it was just a cluck, and it might be 2 or 3 clucks and then a yelp, or a yelp and then a cluck. That was about all he did. I mean, he never got aggressive with turkeys. Never got aggressive with them.
And pretty much only used that box call.
Only used that box call.
Never diaphragm.
Never used a diaphragm. He said he had false teeth. So he said he couldn't feel that diaphragm in his mouth. He said he just didn't like it, so. So he didn't like that diaphragm, so anyway.
Also, did you learn anything from him about how he liked to set up on a turkey? As in, like, was it he just worked to a spot where he thought he was close enough and he'd sit down, or how much did you realize he was analyzing where he wanted to sit, especially if he wasn't moving?
That was the part that he did well. The woodmanship was what he really focused on. His idea was just you want to be where the turkeys want to be. And I've hunted like that. That's one thing I did learn. And the thing about it is being hid. I mean, back then, camouflage was, you went to, you'd go to a local pawn shop, and you would buy, the camo you bought there was that old woodland camo, and that's what you hunted in. It was Army issue, and anyway, and I think about some of the masks. I mean, he would just take a handkerchief that was camouflaged. That was his mask. So it wasn't no high, he wasn't one of those guys that was fancy like that. But anyway, make a long story short, the woodmanship that I learned was to try to be where the turkeys want to be, and to be hid very well. I mean, when he sat down, he always had he had this thing that we could cut limbs, and he was steady sticking limbs, I mean, and it would be, I'm talking 30 minutes before daylight sometimes. I mean, if he knew where a turkey was going to gobble, he might not even float, but he said, okay, we're going to go in here, and he would start sticking these limbs in the ground, and that's it. But the thing about it is he felt like the better you were hid, the better off you were. But the woodsmanship was, you learn turkeys, and especially in this area where these turkeys want to be. And when you hunt those turkeys down there, sometimes you may go in there, and if the water's up, there may be a pond in there that you didn't know was there, and so you had to remove all the obstacles. So those are the things that he did beforehand. But once he sat down, that was it. That was a done deal right there. Yeah. Now he may pull back toward the riverbank sometimes, and then try to pull those turkeys close to the riverbank. And those turkeys love to hang around that river, So they would come up to the edge there. They might not, of course. Every now and then you see a turkey fly the river, but it was very unusual to see a turkey do that. I mean, they will fly it, but but it was unusual. So he would try to get them up to the edge, and they would think maybe that hen might be about to fly. So they, that's what he would say. You might think the hen's going to fly this river, so they want to come up and try to stop her from flying the river. So that's kind of the idea he had, So
Maybe he never told you this, but what did you realize after spending time with him? Did you notice of how he picked trees that he wanted to set up on, and like how far he wanted to see or anything like that based off how he set up?
Well, yeah. It was always a tree bigger than your body. It was always a bigger tree, And it was always big oak trees in those bottoms. Those oak trees were huge. Those big live oaks. It was. Matter of fact, I could just about sit down in the root system and be completely concealed, But it was always a bigger tree than your body.
What gun did your uncle hunt with, and what was his setup?
Shot an Ithaca pump. That's what he shot. It was an old Ithaca.
That's a cool gun.
Yeah. I remember it showed the shells out the bottom. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world,
I'm guessing his generation is before turkey vests. So what was he carrying in the woods with him when he went hunting?
Oh, he had a bag. He just had a bag, And he, that old big Lynch box, man. He put a rag in it, and a rubber band, to keep it from making any noise, that kind of thing. And the shells, the craziest thing is about the shells that he shot. It was just a makeshift of shells. They were turkey loads, pretty much 5s, 6s, things like that. He didn't shoot dove loads, I know he talked, but man, he might have a 5 and a 6, or it's just whatever he put in there first. It didn't really make any difference to him. He was just gonna kill the turkey with whatever he had, So, and it was all 2 3/4 too, no 3-inch, So, but yeah, he was a character. But anyway, he the thing about it is with turkey hunting, it's almost like with me, the introduction of it just absolutely, I don't know how to say it. It's almost like a religion. It's like I said, you know what? If I had to give up anything right now, it would be everything but turkey hunting. And I said, when I get to the point where I can do this, I'm gonna do it. And that's exactly how it happened. It wasn't like this, where you go turkey hunting and like you think about, you go and all of a sudden you learn, and of course I was learning the whole time. But for me, it was like I was just introduced. Like, to give you an example, the first time I heard a turkey gobble in the wild, I was with him. It was almost like it was like unreal. It was almost like that turkey just gobbled. And it sounded so different than anything you ever heard in the woods. It's almost like, man, that is the most awesome thing I've ever heard. And I'm like sitting on the edge of that thing, Now I had to be about 10 or 11 when that happened, guys. I'm trying to figure out exactly why, good gracious, I was probably in the 4th grade. 4th grade. How would you be in the 4th grade?
That's a good question.
That's a question for Andrew. He's the one with a kid.
Oh, my kid's 2. We're not even close to that right now.
Yeah, guys. But for me, turkey hunting was probably, I'm basically a 2nd generation turkey hunter based on my uncle, based on my granddad. It was the stories I heard about my granddad, and not being introduced to anything with turkeys with him, but just knowing that he loved to turkey hunt and that he was successful at it. And my granddad on the Parker side was a heavy equipment operator, so he cleared land. So he had access to land that he could hunt. And of course, back then, nobody really thought about turkeys as like this. It's not like now, So that part of it, and then you take the part here, it was almost like a slight prick or introduction to turkey hunting in a sense, but it was not like this seriousness, like it was like, this is what we do. We just go in here, we're going to turkey hunt, we kill a turkey, it'll be great, but we're going to go fishing when we get done, kind of thing, But for me, it just grabbed me. you know. And I thought, man, if I ever get to the point where I can do this on my own, I am going to absolutely dive into this thing 100%, you know. And but the whole time I'm milking these cows, you know, and I'm turning my own butter. And of course, back then you didn't have YouTube and Google, and you know, so you listen to a lot of old timers. And then, and I'll never forget the first diaphragm I bought was a Quaker Boy call. It was an old boss hen. I bought that thing and like to choked on it, you know, and man, but boy, I finally got that thing to making a noise, and I thought, man, this is good. You ain't got to worry about, you know, your hands, you know. And I thought, man, I just fell in love with calls. I just love turkey calls, but you know, as far as turkey hunting, that's how I got started. Really, it was just being introduced a little at the time, and then when I got to the point where I could get in my truck and I could go turkey hunting, it took off. It took off, and